Hi, good evening to all of you. Today, as part of our special class, we'll be discussing about the General Studies paper 2. This year's General Studies paper 2. That is what we will be discussing as part of our special class today. As all of you know, uh, this year's General Studies paper 2 that UPSC has asked is mostly on conventional lines with more focus on traditional aspects of governance and polity. Before we start discussing this paper, let us, as usual, first look at what are the basic offers on Unacademy platform. You can see it. This is introductory offer resolution to crack UPSC CSE 2023. You can have extra 10% off and 3 months free extension. 18 months combo for 63,893 rupees, which is 60,898 rupees, which is very less. You can save 15,000 rupees. This offer is valid only till today, so you can take admission. You can take admission with our code PKS10, and you will be getting books, 3 months extension as well as test series also. And these are all the top rankers on Unacademy platform. You can see here, including number 2 and up to 20, right? Yes, sir. Nilesh, I will be coming back to SS day after tomorrow. Day after tomorrow, and after that, I will be completing the remaining essay part, right? So that is what I'll be doing. So don't worry, right? Then there are these batches that are starting on 12th January. That is today. You can see, right? Uh, Mission 2022, Expedition 2022. I don't know what is the difference, but there must be some kind of difference, right? Mission 2023 and Expedition 2023. You will also get 20 GS books also, as per latest trend of UPSC. Even UPSC does not know what is their latest trend, right? They also don't know. The only trend that they do know is that they don't have any trend, right? Then optional courses are also launched. You can see here, political science and international relations, then economics, and then public administration, very nice, history, sociology, right? You know, very good. But this is what happens with the jobless growth. For everything, you look into Google for answers. The self-discovery has been outsourced to digital technologies. That's the reason why UPSC is asking those kind of essays also, but for people like us only, right? Then we have political science and international relations, philosophy, right? Then sociology. These are all options that were launched. Then UPSC Combat, I think it was over. And this is what you can get: live mentoring, study planner, and open house with educators. Open house. What do we mean by open house? You open the gates of your house and ask the people to come, right? What do you mean by where is Pavan Gita? What do you mean by that? Buddha, what do you mean by that? Where is Pavan Gita means what? Right? And you can get instant loans at 0% interest rate, no processing fee, and flexible tenure, minimal paperwork. Right. So these are the optionals. Right now, I'm not launching any optional till now. That is the reason why it is not there. The moment I will come, it will be there. Don't worry. Right. So, what are the let us see. Let us see our own analysis of this polity governance paper. You must have seen so much of analysis of this polity governance paper from various experts. So let us also become, for a change, expert and give our own analysis of this polity governance paper, right? Let us give our own analysis of polity governance paper. Yeah, Rishu, that is what I said. We will do rest of the we will do the rest of the essays day after tomorrow onwards. Because if every day we are doing essays, you will also get bored. That's the reason why I thought that I will make some kind of changes. So I started with today polity governance, and I will come back to essays day after tomorrow. We'll come back again to essays, right? We'll come back to essays day after tomorrow. After doing 2 classes of polity governance, or in fact, day after tomorrow, we can go to, I think, I will be doing ethics paper also. I'll be starting ethics paper also. So we will do everything, don't worry, right? So what is this, today, this year's polity governance paper? Very simple, the paper is not at all difficult at all, it is very easy paper. And especially, the focus is more on governance aspects. The focus is more on, analytical aspects of the syllabus. And last year, if the paper was more on polity, this year it is more on governance. International relations also, as I keep on saying, at best you have to study international relations for only 2-3 days, because you can easily predict all the questions also, and the questions are also very straightforward questions, right? Even kindergarten student also would say it is below my dignity to do these kind of questions, and he will leave it, right? That is how the questions are, right? So otherwise, the paper is not that much difficult. This paper, polity governance paper, is not that much difficult, right? Let us see the questions. Constitutional morality. The first question, as you can see it on the screen. Constitutional morality is rooted in the Constitution itself and is founded on its essential facets. Explain the doctrine of constitutional morality with the help of relevant judicial decisions, right? And I don't know how many of you have attended our ethics classes. In those classes, exactly, you can see in your notes also the same statement is there. This is the same statement I have made also, wherein I said, constitutional morality, it can be seen in the constitutional itself. We can find constitutional morality from constitution itself. Yes, all the questions are from public administration. Those who have attended our Indian administration classes, you can see that all these statements also we have made them in the class. All these statements. So there is nothing what you call difficult or different in the question paper. All the questions are mostly directly from public administration, right? So let us look at these things. Constitutional morality, is rooted in the constitution itself. For example, let us start understanding what exactly is this constitutional morality, the term constitutional morality. As we study in the ethics paper, you can have the institutions, you can have the laws, you can have the rules and regulations, but when it comes to implementation of all of them, what is required is your moral values and ethics. For example, take the case of right to information, take the case of right to equality, take the case of right against discrimination, take the case of cultural and social cultural freedoms of the people. Those who are responsible for implementing must have the necessary moral values, so that we can see all these ideals in our constitution being implemented in reality. Again, those who have studied public administration, they know formalism. The basic problem with a prismatic society like India is that we have so much of formalism, right? So that is the reason why the term constitutional morality becomes important. As we have mentioned, when our constitutional forefathers sat down to formulate the constitution, what is there in their mind? What is it that is there in their mind? What they are thinking about? They, in their mind, what they have is what we call this uh, primary laws of nature. This is what we study in our ethics paper also. It is the primary laws of our nature that will influence the secondary laws. The constitution is what we call the secondary law. What are the primary laws of nature that we talk about? The nature does not distinguish between the people in on the basis of their religion, caste, and gender. For example, you go to yes, Anurag, not can, you should, not can, you should, right? So what these primary laws of nature, which is what is called morality, right? So what are we saying here? What we are saying here is that you go to a river. Does the river say that you are a backward caste person, so you cannot have water from my river? It will never say that. As we studied again in your ethics paper. See, why I'm saying is that if you have to make your answers a little bit more different from what others write, please remember you have to make your answers innovative. As we studied in our ethics paper, if you remember, those who have attended our ethics classes, we said that we made a very beautiful statement. The rivers do not drink the water for themselves, right? The trees do not eat the fruits for themselves, and the clouds do not eat the grains for themselves. And the knowledge and wealth of the people should always be used for the sake of others. So what we are saying here is that what we can learn from nature is that nature never differentiates between the people. It is the people who differentiate between among themselves. Nature does not differentiate. This is what we call the highest sense of morality. This is the highest level of morality. And this morality is the one which defined our constitution also. And that is what I would like you to write as part of your introduction to the question. This is the morality. This is the nature, primary laws of nature. That is what we say. Primary laws of nature is what that really define our constitutional ideals. And that is what exactly the meaning of the first part of the statement. Constitutional morality is rooted in the constitution itself. And what is this morality that we are talking about? As I said, we should not be discriminating between the people. We should not we should be treating each and everyone equally. We should be protecting the fundamental rights of the people. We should be ensuring that poorest sections of the society will have more opportunities to develop themselves, and we should be protecting the right to life and liberty of the people. These are all the things that we talk about as part of our nature. These are all the things that we talk as part of our nature. And this is what we have included in our constitution also. This is what we have included in our constitution also. And that is the reason why, as the statement mentions clearly, the constitutional morality is rooted in the constitution itself. It is rooted in the constitution itself, right? It is founded on these essential facets. Explain this constitutional morality with the help of relevant examples from judiciary. Our judiciary in recent times, as part of judicial activism, there are so many decisions of our judiciary which are based on this concept of constitutional morality. What are they? Go back to Supreme Court judgment in Shabana case. People are writing only very recent judgments. Go back to Supreme Court judgment in Shabana case, wherein Supreme Court has said that it is the morality that is the nature that should really define, not the traditions and customs of the people, right? Not the traditions and customs. In the Shabana case, the old Muslim lady was given divorce by her husband, and she was not given any fair compensation also. That is when Supreme Court has used this constitutional morality for the first time at that point of time. Even though the word constitutional morality was used by Supreme Court only recently in some of its judgments, but going back, there were so many judgments of Supreme Court that were based on this concept of constitutional morality. That means what you are doing as part of constitutional morality is that you are defining, you are interpreting the constitutional norms, constitutional the principles in a moral and ethical manner. As Jawaharlal Nehru says, Constitution is not a mere static rule book. It reflects the wishes, it reflects the wishes, it reflects the demands, desires, wants of a society, of a group of people. And that is where Supreme Court has done. Going back from Shabana case, in recent times, Supreme Court has used this constitutional morality term in so many of its judgments also. For example, take the case of Supreme Court judgment in Shabarimala case, wherein Supreme Court has said that we cannot discriminate people on the basis of their gender when they want to enter into what we call we cannot discriminate the people in and when they want to enter into these temples. That is very constitutional morality. And again, Supreme Court judgment, when it has said that the right to privacy is also what we call a fundamental right, right to privacy. It is also a fundamental right. And this is again what we say based on what is called constitutional morality. It is also a judgment of Supreme Court, which is it fine now? Okay, fine. Right, right. So it's okay. That is good. Right. So that is what we say here. What the Supreme Court has done in recent times is that it is going beyond the traditional norms of the Constitution to protect the fundamental rights of the citizens by citing what is called constitutional morality. It is going beyond the traditional norms of the Constitution. Whether it is the case with the rights of the gender, female, whether it is the case with the rights of other sections of society, Supreme Court is trying to come to the rescue of those sections of society with its emphasis on constitutional morality. That is what. And how do you conclude your answer? That is also very important. How do you conclude your answer for these kind of questions? You conclude your answer by saying that the judiciary is expected to go back to what we studied in our Indian administration, constitutionalism. You conclude your answer with what is called constitutionalism. Constitutionalism can be achieved by independent and impartial judiciary only when its judgments are based on constitutional morality. That is how you conclude your answer. I said you have to make your answers a little bit more different from others, because when the questions are very easy, almost everyone will be writing the same answer, right? When the questions are very easy, everyone will be writing the same answer. Then how do you make your answer relevant, different from others? Because at the end of the day, this examination is all about what is called relative, relative performance, not absolute performance. So that is where you have to be a little bit more creative in terms of your writing answers. You conclude your answer with constitutionalism. That is what. Come to constitutionalism, Anurag, constitutionalism. You say that the objectives of constitutionalism in brackets. You have to mention what is constitutionalism also. In a objectives of constitutionalism, like protecting the fundamental rights of the citizens and also ensuring inherent checks and balances, can be achieved by judiciary only when it interprets the constitution with the help of constitutional morality. That is what you have to write as part of your answers, right? Exactly. But the facets means many faces of our constitution, basically different dimensions of our constitution. That is what, right? This is what you have to write for this question. Uh, is it fine? Can we move on to the next question? Shall we move on to the next question? Right. Right. This is the next question. No. Constitutional morality, versus legal, that is different. Ketan, that is different. Morality versus legality is different. We are talking about constitutional morality here. So both of them are different. So you don't have to interlink all of them. Right? Next, discuss the desirability of greater representation to women. Discuss the desirability of greater representation to women in the higher judiciary to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. Discuss the desirability of greater representation to women in, in the higher judiciary to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. Right? The best part of it is that the answer is there in the question itself. Either we need greater representation to women because we have to ensure diversity, we have to ensure equity, and we have to ensure inclusiveness. You say that I agree with the question. Thank you very much, UPSC, for asking such stupid questions. I agree with the question. Right? That is what you have to write. Unnecessarily, I believe UPSC is unnecessarily getting influenced by our classes. We said that almost all the questions are related only to women. If you remember, that is what we discussed in our classes. What we have said is that if you know about the issues related to women, we don't know whether women are empowered or not, but you will be empowered. You will get into civil services. That is what we have said. And UPSC is taking this very seriously. Right? That is what so yeah, UPSC is taking that very seriously and they are asking. And you remember, when our Chief Justice, right, when our Chief Justice, made a comment recently that we need greater representation for women. UPSC took that statement and they have given it as a question. Right? So how do you start your answer? As usual, you start your answer with the fact that what is the representation of women? We have 48% of our country, our population is women. 48% of our population is women in our country, right? And what is the representation in our judiciary? It is only 4%. You start your answer with this statistics, right? Then automatically 90% of the answer is over, right? 48% of our population is women and 4% of them are only represented in our higher level judiciary. Only 4% of judges are what we have female judges. And for the first time, we had a female Supreme Court judge only in 1989. 1951, when we had our Supreme Court started functioning fully after the commencement of the Constitution. And we had first female judge only in 1989. Right? So obviously, their representation in our higher level judiciary is very, very less. Right? Now, why do we need women? That is what the crux of your answer. After giving these statistics, your focus is all about discussing why do we need more representation for women in judiciary, especially in higher level judiciary. Why do we need? And then what are the problems and what could be the solutions? That is what we have to talk about here. Why do we need more women? Right? First and foremost, India is a patriarchal society. India is a patriarchal society wherein women issues are never publicly discussed or debated or found solutions. We are a patriarchal society. Why? Because as I keep on saying, the focus is on talking about the why aspect. In both legislature and executive, which are popular institutions, right? Both legislature and executive, which are popular institutions, representation of women is very, very less, right? So their participation in policy formulation and policy implementation is negligible because of the fact that women are never considered, right, a powerful pressure group. On the other hand, if you look at the society, maximum amount of crimes are committed against women. and there is no one to help them, there is no one to rescue them, there is no one to you know, come to empathize with their problems. Their representation in police is also very less, bureaucracy is also very less, in in politics is also very less. And what it does is that women simply do not have any kind of avenue, they don't have any kind of institution to discuss and to find solutions to their problems, because politics is always run on populistic issues, and women issues are never popular with the politicians, they only pay lip service. So the only institution that can come to the rescue of women, please remember this is what you have to write, the only institution that can come to the rescue of women without you know catering to political populism is judiciary. The only issue you know that can come to the rescue of women without catering to political populism is judiciary, and that is where we need more representation for women in judiciary. That is where we need more representation for women in judiciary, right? That is what the why aspect here. Why? Because judiciary will not, for example, when Supreme Court, you have to write all these things. Please remember, you have to write all these things. When Supreme Court had come out with Shabana case judgment, what did the political class do? They nullified the judgment by amending the constitution. They nullified the Supreme Court judgment by amending the constitution. So women cannot expect either legislature or executive to come to their rescue, right? They cannot expect either legislature and executive come to their rescue. So the only institution that is left here, which is not influenced by this so-called political populism, is judiciary, and that is the reason why we need more representation to women in our judiciary. This is what you have to write. And then next reason why we need more representation of women in our judiciary. Why? Because it is difficult for men to empathize with the problems of women, especially in patriarchal societies. Why? Because the personal loss of all religions. Please remember, this is what you have to write here. The personal loss of all religions, what we call we have Hindu code bill. That's a different thing. Other religions are totally against the personal loss of other religions are totally against women, treating women as equal. And that is the reason why we need more representation to women in our higher judiciary, so that judiciary can protect those sections of society, especially from these highly conservative traditions and customs that these religions have. That is another reason why we need more representation to women. Now, after giving the reasons, then you have to come out with the solutions. What should be done? What can be done? What should be done to ensure that women are given more representation? It is not getting possible. It is not possible with what we call the present system. So, what should be done? First and foremost, more than the reservations, what is required is you must focus on creating the infrastructure. As our Supreme Court Chief Justice pointed out, you know, yeah, again, that is what Buddha, that is where the problem is. The problem is that if you have one, you are talking about, Bombay, one of the judges in Maharashtra High Court, right, who had come out with some stupid judgments, right? They had come out with these stupid judgments. So, that is a different thing, because you have only one female judge. If you have more of them, then you don't find these kind of things, right? That is what we have to remember. So coming back here, what should be done to ensure more representation? Is reservations the solution? Should we reserve the seats? Should we reserve some of the positions in the higher judiciary for women? It may be solution, but it is a short-sighted solution. In the short term, you can have reservations, but that will not provide the solutions to the problems. What our Chief Justice also pointed out, that how can we have more representation for women? Why? Because even in some of the high courts also, there are no toilets for women. Basic infrastructure is also not there. In some of the high courts also, we don't have any toilets for women. So that is how. Then how can you expect, can the reservations be the solution? Not at all. So what the government should do is that there must be focus on infrastructure from the lowest level. From the district level judiciary onwards, we must promote more representation to women so that we can have much larger pool to select, right? That is what Sunidhi I am saying, creating infrastructure. That is what Sunidhi, that's what we are saying. Creating infrastructure means you must create a conducive atmosphere for women to, become part of a judiciary. Like, you know, what we are talking about here is that encouraging more women to take up this legal profession. As I said, how can you take up a legal profession when you know that in the high courts there are not even toilets for women also, when there is no safety and security of women also. So obviously these are the things that have to be addressed immediately so that we can have better and more representation to women. You know, Anurag, self-help groups for everything. The solution is not self-help groups, right? Don't get unnecessarily emotional here. What we have to say here is that government should encourage the government should encourage participation of women from the lowest judiciary itself. At the lower level judiciary, give reservations definitely. At lower level judiciary, you can give reservations so that there is more representation to women, so that we can have more women judges at the higher level also. That is what it is required. And when you have 48% of your population women, we must also have a situation wherein 48% of our judges are also women. We must reach that kind of position. Why? Because as we have mentioned, what we have seen over the years is that these male judges simply could not understand and empathize with the problems of women. And the patriarchal mindset of the male judges come in the way of coming out with radical judgments also. And most of their judgments are what is called patronizing in nature. Rather than empowering women, their judgments, what they do only is come out with some kind of applying some bomb to be much bigger problem. That is not the way it should be done. What is required here is a radical you know change in the attitude of our judges also, and that is possible only when you have more women judges. Then that is what you have to write for this question. That is what you have to write. Right? You know, Creating proper infrastructure, encouraging more judges at the lowest level, and then increasing awareness among the women about legal education. Right? Exactly. You know, that is what exactly that is what we are saying. What is the point? That is where Amartya comes into picture. He talks about capability approach. He says that what is the use of reservations when you're not creating abilities in the people to utilize those reservations. So most of the reservations again will be misused and abused. First, to create the abilities in the people, encourage the women to come out, and get better education for themselves, and provide free education to women. Whatever they study from as a KG to PG, give them completely free education, and open more law colleges in rural areas also. How many top level law colleges are there in the country? So where is the question of women coming up? If you look at our judiciary, since independence, it is only 300 families that have you know, 300 families that have dominated our judiciary, and in those families also, it is only the male members of the family. Justice Chandrachud, his father was also Chief Justice some time back. And if you look at Supreme Court, most of them are mostly what is called second and the third generation judges only. So obviously, this is not the way that things can be done or should be done. You have to start with a project of 20 years. After 20 years, we should have at least 50% representation for women, and start from the scratch rather than opting for what we call these simple solutions like reservations. Right? That is what you have to write for this question. Next, how have the recommendations of 14th Finance Commission of India enabled the states to improve their fiscal position. If you remember, I have discussed these things in our class also. Those who have attended our Indian administration classes, we have discussed these things. We made a critique of these things also, right? So, what are the major recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission? Basically, the most important recommendation of 14th Finance Commission is that the revenues to be given to the states, right? The share of revenues, states revenue in the overall tax revenues has been increased from 32% to 42%. That is what the major recommendation of 14th Finance Commission. The central government has said that in the true spirit of cooperative federalism, exactly, Anurag, that is what I am saying, right? That is what I am saying, and that is what we keep on saying all the time. We don't have any copyrights, right? Now again, I was just watching some of these model answers, so-called model answers put up by the coaching institute for these kind of questions. They're rubbish, to say the least, right? So please don't unnecessarily go through all those sources. They will unnecessarily, poison your mindset. So what are the two, three important recommendations of 14th Finance Commission? First, they have increased the share of the states from 32% to 42%. And they have also increased the FRBM limits from 3% to 3.5%. Right? The states are being given more opportunities. Right? Next, the third thing that the 14th Finance Commission has said is that they have also, what they have done is that they have also given more freedom to the states in terms of implementing centrally sponsored schemes. In centrally sponsored schemes, they have given more freedom to the states. This is this is what this 14th Finance Commission has done. This is what it has done. Three important recommendations, right? One is 32% to 42%, and fourth important recommendation of 14th Finance Commission is that it has said that there is no need for any special category status for other states. That is what central government has said, that there is no need for any special category status, because the revenues to the states are increased by 10%. That is what it has said. But the question here is whether the recommendations of 14th Finance Commission have enabled the states to improve their fiscal position or not. That is what the question says. So we are not. The question is not asking what are the recommendations. The question is not asking what are the recommendations. The question is asking whether those recommendations have enabled the states to improve their fiscal position or not. Obviously, this has not been done. Let us see what are the positive aspects of 14th Finance Commission. First and foremost, as we discussed earlier in our classes also, the recommendations of Finance Commission are what we call unconditional grants. Whereas earlier we had the Planning Commission, they were conditional grants. So the tax revenues are what we call unconditional grants that are given to the state governments. So now with the dismantling of Planning Commission, the revenues are routed to the state governments through only Finance Commission. So what is the advantage here? The state governments have the freedom to spend those revenues the way they like. This is the most important outcome of 14th Finance Commission. There are no strings attached to the revenues that are shared with the states by the central government. They can spend the money the way they like. That means the state governments are given more freedom to spend the monies, right? That is first thing. Second thing is that it has recommended that the FRBM limits can be increased from 3 to 3.5%. 3 to 3.5% FRBM limits, so that the state can borrow a little bit more also, right? That also has helped the state governments to borrow more to finance their capital expenditure. But if you look at the other side, which is very important here, the problem here is that in spite of increasing the share of the state governments from 32% to 42%, right? The real fiscal position of the state governments has not changed much. Why? Why? Because the central government, in order to avoid the sharing of revenues with the state governments, depended more on cess and surcharge. They depended more on cess and surcharge to avoid sharing of revenues with the state governments. In the last 7 years, the central government has collected more than 21 lakh crores of rupees through cess and surcharge in order to avoid the sharing of revenues. So what happened? In spite of increasing the share of the state governments from 32% to 42%, in real terms, in absolute terms, in spite of increasing the share of the state governments from 32% to 42%, in absolute terms, what happened was the revenues of the state governments did not go up much. Their revenues were the same as it was in the 13th Finance Commission, whether it is 32% or 42%. This is where it had become problematic. In that sense, it did not really help the state governments to increase their revenues. That is where the problem. And then, what happened? From 2017 onwards, this is what I say, analysis is very important. 2017 onwards, the government started implementing GST. So, the state governments simply did not have any powers to impose any new taxes also with the GST, because it is the GST Council that has decided. So, the major source of revenue for the state governments is state sales tax, which they had to forego with the implementation of GST. This also has had an impact on the state governments, right? Right? It has also has impacted on state governments. But in the GST Council, there were provisions for the state governments to secure their interests. That the central government has promised to them that any kind of shortfall in the revenue, central government will compensate the states. That is what they have said. So that is a different thing. Another important recommendation of this 14th Finance Commission is that the 14th Finance Commission has given more importance to equity than efficiency. And obviously, what happened? What happened because of this? The performing states have complained that their share in overall tax revenues was coming down. The performing states have complained that their share in overall tax revenue also has come down. Especially South Indian states have complained. This is another consequence of 14th Finance Commission. And what are the other most important consequence of 14th Finance Commission recommendations? This is what you have to write. The most important consequence here is that since the Finance Commission recommendations are unconditional grants, unconditional revenues that are given by the center to the states, almost every state has used this money to increase the subsidies that are given to various sections of society. Political populism. From 2014 onwards, what we have seen in our country is huge amount of this competitive populism among the political parties between the state governments. So what is happening here is that because of this 14th Finance Commission recommendations, the amount of money spent by the state governments on amount of money spent by the state governments on infrastructure, capital expenditure has come down drastically. Because earlier, with the planning commission, they could not divert the resources. They must spend that money on capital expenditure. Now, what is happening is that every state government was spending its monies only on giving more subsidies. That led to deterioration in the financial position of the state governments. Then, how do we how do we conclude? This could be seen during the Corona crisis, when 2 months of lockdown has almost resulted in the collapse of all the state governments, because none of the state governments simply do not have any other sources of revenues. Please remember all these things you have to write in your answer, right? So you have to write as many dimensions, as many points as possible. What is the immediate consequence of this 14th Finance Commission recommendations? Every state government finances have collapsed. Why? Because state governments are not looking at other sources of revenue, because they are not allocating money to public sector enterprises. They are not allocating money to public sector enterprises. they are not allocating money for capital expenditure. So they don't have any other source of revenue except tax revenues. They don't have any other source of revenue except tax revenues. When these tax revenues have stopped during the corona crisis, and what happened was it led to collapse of all the state governments financial. This is another dangerous consequence of this 14th Finance Commission. All these things you have to write here, right? Why? Because every state government was only spending all its monies only on financing, what we call these subsidies on revenue expenditure on, right? That is what you have to write for this question, right? See, 14th Finance Commission has given fiscal freedom to the state governments, but when you give freedom without any accountability, that results in misuse and abuse. That is what exactly happened with the 14th Finance Commission recommendations. Every state government has used the additional amount of money that they have got only to finance populistic subsidies. That led to the collapse of the state government's finances during the corona crisis. That is what you have to write here also, right? This is what you have to write for this question. Fine. Shall we move on to the next question? Any doubt? Please remember, all these statements are there in our notes only, right? Let us move on to the next question. Here, this is the next question. To what extent, in your view, the parliament is able to ensure accountability of the executive in India? And what you can see here, again, the statement directly taken from our class notes, right? Right? That is where again copyright issues will come. To what extent, in your view, parliament is able to ensure accountability of the executive in India? Again, your focus should be on analysis. The question is not about, please remember, the question is not about what are the instruments of parliamentary accountability. That is what the question is not about, what are the instruments of parliamentary control. Please remember, the question is not about the instruments of parliamentary control. And what you can see is that most of the students, what they have written is that they have written about question hour, 0 hour, passing of budgets, 0 in the essential motion, so on and so forth. That is not the question. Please remember, the question is not about what the instruments of parliament's control over executive. The question here is that whether executive, whether parliament is able to ensure accountability of executive in India. That is what the question says. Please remember, that is what the question says. Whether our parliament has been able to ensure the accountability of executive. That is what the question. What is your opinion? So you have to give your opinion and along with facts. Facts are very important here. You have to give your opinion along with facts, and then you have to come out with suggestions also. You have to come out with suggestions also. Right. So what do you say here? You start your answer by saying that in recent times, it has been observed that our legislature has become an extension of executive. It has become an extension of executive. Straight away you are coming to the point. You are not beating around the bush. Straight away you are coming to the point. In recent times, it has been observed that our legislature has become nothing but an extension of executive. Why? Give all the important facts and reasons. What are they? First and foremost, since 2019 onwards, all the bills were passed by Parliament without any discussion and debate. All the bills were passed. Not even a single bill was referred to Select Committee of Parliament. Not even a single bill was referred to Select Committee of Parliament since 2019. Similarly, critical constitutional amendments were also passed. Critical constitutional amendments were also passed. Again, without any discussion and debate. You have to give the examples. For example, take the case of RTA, amendments to RTA. Executive used its majority on the floor of the House. Then give the example of this removal of this Article 370 from the Constitution. Then give the example of farm bills. Give the example of other important legislations which have been passed mostly without any discussion on the floor of the House. This is one example. Next, budgetary, budgets are mostly guillotined, right? Budgets are mostly guillotined without any discussion and debate on the floor of the House. Budgets are mostly guillotined. Next, why do we say, question hour is regularly, question hour is regularly, it has been, the government never, makes sure that this question hour takes place on the floor of the House. Then, next example, the number of days of Parliament is meeting is coming down drastically. Last year, Parliament has met for less than 40 days. The number of days Parliament is meeting is coming down very drastically. It has met for less than 40 days. And more than half of the time was over only in conflict between ruling party and opposition parties. Give the example. Previous 2 sessions of Parliament were completely washed out. One session of Parliament was washed out because of this Pegasus issue. Pegasus issue, right? Another session of Parliament was washed out because of this corruption charges in the defense deals, Pegasus issue. So that is what happened. So what is happening here is that executive has a complete freedom in terms of getting the bills passed. Executive is using legislature only as an institution to get the bills passed. Beyond that, executive does not give any importance to legislature. This is what we say. And then, after mentioning all these things, what you will say is that our Parliament has failed because of the rigid political party system that is there in India, and because of absence of inner party democracy. Because members of Parliament, they behave like Buddha, you cannot say rubber stamp and those kind of things. It is uncivilized language, rubber stamp and all those kind of things. You have to use a little bit more civilized language. That is why you say that executive has become nothing but an extension. Sorry, legislature has become nothing but an extension of executive. That is what you can say, right? Yeah, it is when we say Anurag executive, we are only talking about political executive and nothing else. We are only talking about political executive and nothing else. So after giving all these reasons, as usual, I said you have to talk about the solutions. What are solutions? What are the solutions that we have mentioned in our class? You can write all of them. First and foremost, the number of days Parliament should be meeting must be fixed. Parliament should meet for at least 150 days in a year. I said in the last year, it has met for less than 40 days. It has met for less than 40 days. This cannot be done. If the parliament is not meeting means automatically, executive gets a free run to do whatever it wants. Second, what we have seen is that in spite of the fact that executive has majority on the floor of the house in both the houses, the executive tendency to issue more ordinances. In the last 7 years, maximum number of ordinances that are issued by the government, compared to the previous 65 years of independence, more number of ordinances are issued. So that is the reason why this ordinance making power of the executive should also be curtailed, so that every bill would be discussed and debated on the floor of the house. Third important solution is, political parties should not be issuing whips to members for voting on the floor of the house regarding ordinary bills. The members of parliament should be given complete freedom to vote according to their conscience, on the floor of the house. Then we must, amend anti-defection laws. The power to decide this defection should be taken away from the speakers and presiding officers of the house. Why? Because if any opposition MP defects to the ruling political party, automatically the speaker will not decide on the defection immediately. He will take his own time. On the other hand, if any ruling party of a MP defects, immediately speaker and chairman of Rajya Sabha would immediately take the decision and they would disqualify that person. So obviously, this has resulted in what we call politicization of the office of speaker. That is the reason why we say that we must make amendments to this anti-defection law also. This is another important reform. Then, as we discussed, he can write one more important reform. If parliament is adjourned for any other reason, then immediately the members of parliament should not be paid their allowances and salary, because our parliament is the only place in the world wherein members of parliament are paid huge amounts of salaries and allowances for not working. So if for any reason, if it is house is adjourned, the house should meet for extra number of days. For those extra number of days, these members of parliament should not be paid any. They should not be paid any what we call remuneration to ensure accountability. So you have to write all these things. You have to write all these things. Since 2019, not even a single bill was referred to select committee of parliament. And most of the bills are introduced by the government on the floor of the house just before the session begins. For example, give the example, removal of Article 370. It was given to the members of parliament 1 hour before the start of the session. Members of parliament were asked to go through the bill, which is running into hundreds of pages in 1 hour. And then the speaker has allocated around 6-7 hours of discussion, and immediately it was put to vote also. That is where the problem with our parliamentary democracy. And you say that on the other hand, in United Kingdom, for an ordinary bill to be passed by the parliament there, it will take at least minimum 12 to 14 months. That is why parliamentary democracy in United Kingdom was successful. And that is what you have to write here also, right? So this is what you have to write for this question. Whether parliament is able to ensure the accountability of executive in India, right? Yes, you can give a lot of examples, but for example, Information Technology Act was passed by our parliament in exactly 2 minutes. The section 66A, people had come to know about the disastrous consequences of this Information Technology Act only when it was implemented, especially the section 66A. Why? Because our parliamentarians never discussed and debated. Similarly, recently, what did the Supreme Court Chief Justice have said? You can quote him also. As pointed out by recently the Supreme Court Chief Justice, judiciary is forced to intervene in matters which are otherwise exclusive domain of legislature because of the unwillingness of the members of parliament to discuss and debate the legislations before they are voted upon on the floor of the house. He can quote the statement of our Supreme Court Chief Justice also, right? So this is what it is. I think the time is up. We will continue with politic governance tomorrow. And day after tomorrow, I think I will be taking up ethics papers. Then we will come back to essay, political governance, and ethics. Like that, we will do so that it will not become monotonous for us, right? So that is it. Tomorrow we will talk about other questions. Please remember, focus on the analysis that we have given for each and every question. That is very important. Analysis is very important. Why people don't get marks in political governance paper in spite of the fact that the questions look easy, because they write only facts but not analysis. That's more important, right? So that is it. Take care of yourself. Tomorrow we will meet at the same time, 5